When I was working in Africa, I fell in love with this little boy named Otis. Otis was being raised by his grandmother in a hut down the road, and literally the only thing he owned was like two t-shirts that were really more whole than shirt. You could see his rounded belly beneath them, and no pants, and this pile of sticks and stones that he would play with. Every day, his grandmother would walk down the road to the village, and Otis would stay and look after himself, and I would see him outside scavenging for bruised mangoes or things that had fallen for the tree, because that's what he would get for lunch. And before I left, I wanted to do something to help this family that was just existing on the edge of survival. So I went to the village and I bought this enormous box of individually wrapped protein biscuits. And my thinking was that there would be enough packets of biscuits here to give Otis good lunches for maybe 3 or 4 months. So I presented this giant box to Otis and his grandmother, and they just thanked me profusely. And then Otis immediately disappeared. And I wondered where he'd gone until I heard the sound of his voice outside the hut, and he was running down the dirt road to the village, and I could hear him just shouting at the top of his lungs, "We've got lunch!" Immediately, children start streaming out of all of these houses that line the road, and they all show up at Otis's house, and he starts just tearing open this box and handing them individual packets of biscuits, one for every child. And by the time the kids stop coming, there's maybe 2 or 3 packets left at the bottom of this giant empty box. And Otis gives one to his grandmother, and he tears one open himself, and he sits down to eat lunch with the biggest smile on his face. I realized I had just witnessed something really profound. In the Bible, in the book of Exodus, the Israelites are slaves in Egypt, and their job within the Egyptian economy is basically to build these giant storehouses where Egypt keeps all of its excess wealth and excess grain. But when God brings the Israelites out of Egypt to start this new nation and new life together, things work really differently. Every night this bread falls from heaven called manna, and it lies on the ground scattered around their tents. And in the morning they get up and they gather what they need, and that's what they eat. But there's just one rule with this manna from heaven, and that's that people are only allowed to gather what they and their family need for that day. If they try to gather excess for 2 days or 3 days ahead, all of the manna rots. I think what God is really doing here is teaching the Israelites a lesson in a new kind of economy. Unlike the economy of Egypt or the nations that traffic in these huge storehouses, the economy of God involves providing enough for all to have what they need this day. Jesus teaches his followers to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." I wonder what the world would look like if all of us lived by a daily bread economy.